So, I'm just gonna be honest here. There are oftentimes food trends that you guys send my way that just don't seem compelling enough to make a video about. Maybe there's not enough substance. And this was one of them. The TikTok upside down pastry hacks. I'm sure you've seen these somewhere by now, because these have been around for months, and as much as I thought they were just gonna come and go, I was very wrong. They're still here and garnering millions of views. So let's jump in head first and test out the main, most popular one, the caramelized onion and Gruyere pastry, as well as the upside down pepperoni pizza pastries, for dessert, the honey apple ones, and to wrap everything up, I thought it'd be fun to come up with my own creation. I'm gonna leave you in suspense for a little bit as to what that's gonna be, but let's get right into this one. We can't resist these any longer, so grab your shallots and your pastry, and let's make the caramelized onion Gruyere upside down pastries. You will need some puff pastry and pomegranate molasses, prosciutto and olive oil, Gruyere cheese, shallots, an egg, and some salt and pepper. Now before all of you go attacking me in the comments for my resistance to these, be honest with yourselves, can you really blame me? At first glance, these things are just a classy, savory Pop-Tart. I mean, who knew they would take over food internet as much as they have? And I'm not saying they look bad at all. I think they're actually gonna taste pretty good, but I'm just a little confused by the craze that they've caused. There are some pluses here, regardless of how good they come out. Number one, I'm getting to use this pomegranate molasses again, an ingredient I bought once and thought I would never have to touch again. I believe these were actually from the Gusher video, and if I remember correctly, that was from June of 2019. Now that I think about it, I probably should have checked the date on this, but it's too late now. I don't have time to get another one, so I'm gonna pretend it's fine. As you've seen, these are also incredibly easy and quick to make once you get all your ingredients prepped and layered up on your parchment or your silpat. You chop up your puff pastry, you cover each and every mound, give them a little crimp and egg wash, and then bake them off in a 400-degree oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. I did have to cover mine with a little bit of foil halfway through to ensure they didn't get too dark. And even though I successfully prevented that from happening on the tops, once I flipped them over, the bottoms got a little bit dark, I'm not gonna lie to you. That's probably due to all the sugars in the molasses, if I had to guess, but every other part of this looks pretty good, so let's give our first upside down pastry a taste. So there are some dark spots, to say the least. Hopefully that bitterness doesn't overpower the whole thing. Let's see if I can get one of those viral, breaking apart money shots. I don't know. It's good, for sure, especially those middle bites where you get a little bit of everything. The ends are kind of just bread and burnt bits. I think the ratios are a little bit off because of that. I find myself wanting more of everything besides the pastry. There's a lot of mouthfuls of just pure bread, but like I said, the middle's pretty good. Do I understand the hype or the views that this stuff has garnered? Not quite yet. Next up, for the main course, is potentially the best application anybody could think of for the upside down pastry. I don't know how more people haven't made videos on this. It's the upside down pepperoni pizza pastry. And for those, I grabbed some puff pastry and mozzarella, pepperoni, pizza sauce, and an egg. When I was sifting through all the versions of this that you guys were sending me over, I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see this one. I feel like the internet food culture these days is to overcomplicate everything, add as much stuff, and utilize as many expert techniques as you can possibly cram into one food video. And this is not that at all. It's kind of the opposite of everything I just said. It's very simply a layer of your pepperoni slices, a heaping mound of your cubed up mozzarella, a little dollop of your store-bought pizza sauce. That's right, your eyes don't deceive you. We're not hand crushing or immersion blending an $8 jar of San Marzanos for this one. Of course, it's sealed with a round puff pastry this time. Of course, you could just cut a round out of the normal square sheets if that's all you have. A little bit of egg wash, and then about the same oven procedure. 375 for 22 to 25 minutes. There's not really a whole lot else to say yet with these, besides that they do give you one heck of a cheese pull. I absolutely singed the tips of my fingers, but it's the risk you gotta take for a good thumbnail these days. And that's all there is for this one, so let's give it a try. Well, as you saw in the last clip, I plated 3 of these, and now I have 2. And the reason is because I just spent 7 minutes eating one and reviewing it just to realize the mic was off. Rather than trying to reenact what I just did and pretend I haven't tasted this yet, I'll just talk you through. I'll do a voiceover of the voiceover. So here I was talking about how much I hate my hair and how brittle and Brillo patty it is. Then I was saying how good these looked in all of their greasy glory. These things are glistening. And then I took a bite and absolutely burnt the shit out of my lower lip and chin. I don't know if that was from the grease or the sauce or both, but it was like molten lava on my face. I wouldn't have been able to reenact that for you. And then I was talking about how good they were, even in their simplicity. They remind me of a 2016 recipe. They are very easily attainable to everybody, which is not something I've been able to say much recently. I would jazz them up though, if I ever made these again. I would add a little bit of parm, maybe some fresh basil. This is a really good base for whatever else you might want to add, and it's a really good usage of this technique, so I would highly recommend 2 thumbs up. That's about the gist of it. And for our dessert course, we've got the upside down apple and honey pastries. And obviously, you need honey, green apples, puff pastry, and an egg. Now clearly, this is another candidate for maybe the simplest recipe of all time. It's gotta be the simplest in the last couple months. Because once you've got your apple slices prepped, your puff pastry cut down to size, you squeeze out a little bit of your honey with the apples, cover them up, and bake them off. This is the first one that we're not going to be crimping the edges of or poking those little ventilation holes in the top with the fork. I guess that's something interesting to note because there's not a whole lot else to talk about here. Maybe this will be the new example of a food that's greater than the sum of its ingredients. I mean, we've seen what some pasta water and Parmesan cheese can turn into, based on the fact that this is by far the most viewed of any of the recipes we've tried today, clocking in at 26 million on TikTok. I have about the same level of expectations for how these are gonna turn out. I know I praised the simplicity of the last one, the pizzas, but this is on a whole nother level. Whoops. The only reaction that's really coming to me is like a shrug. It tastes like a pastry and an apple and a touch of honey. None of these are gonna be bad, as I said earlier, with the ingredients that we're using. And I guess I kind of like the fact that there's a trend where almost every single version of it is so simple, but I feel like this is just screaming for more. I don't know how you can make this and not put brown sugar and cinnamon, some other warm spices maybe, a splash of vanilla. You know what? Instead of me just telling you guys what I think all of these could use, why don't I whip some up? I got extra apples and puff pastry. I'm utilizing the same apple slices and a drizzle of the honey, but just adding some cinnamon, a little pinch of salt, some brown sugar. If you don't have this stuff on hand, of course, just do the plain apple and honey one, but if you do, why not? It takes another 30 seconds, and I have a feeling those extra couple of seconds might just be worth it. Now this is a fall treat if I've ever seen one. These need to come back in a couple months. I'll do it myself if I have to. It's everything you love in an apple pie, except in a single serve, crispy, thin, handheld creation. I was not planning on making these today. It's just something that kind of popped in my head halfway through. I do have one more original creation, just to see how that stacks up as well. As I was planning out and then filming this video, I was thinking, what other foods do we bake and wrap in puff pastry that I could shrink down into the same shape and serving size that we've been doing all day? I grabbed some puff pastry and cognac, garlic and butter, prosciutto and filet mignon steaks, a shallot and an egg, mushrooms, Dijon mustard, salt and pepper, and fresh thyme and rosemary. Now, I'm sure most of you can guess where I'm going with this, the prized beef Wellington. I don't know how nobody else has thought of this already. I mean, unless I haven't seen it yet, you guys can let me know in the comments. But here's my basic idea. I'm gonna make the same exact mushroom duxelle as I would for a standard beef Wellington, with loads of chopped up mushrooms, shallots and garlic, butter, fresh thyme. I'm gonna deglaze with a bit of alcohol. Feel free to use whatever kind of wine you like. In my case, I'm using a splash of cognac. Obviously take your time with this. It takes forever to get all the water out of the mushrooms. That was the biggest mistake I made the last time I made a Wellington. And by far, the biggest issue I had mentally when planning this out was how I was gonna go about preparing the beef. Tiny little steaks like this take no time at all in the oven, just a couple of minutes, otherwise you're gonna overcook them. For that reason, I wasn't gonna have these see any heat at all prior to the oven, but I really wanted to make sure I had a nice sear on at least one side of this for presentation purposes. So this is what I ended up landing on. I cranked the heat on this burner to as high as it went and let the cast iron heat up for, I want to say 10 minutes, until this thing was smoking hot. This also starts to introduce some flavor to our creation through the butter and the herbs, and it allowed us to get a decent sear, but I'm talking 25 to 30 seconds aside max. I then sliced them right down the middle through the centers, placed the already seared part on the bottom, and stacked all my other components on top of that. I cranked my oven temperature to as high as it could possibly go. I want to say about 475 degrees, because once your puff pastry gets any kind of color on it whatsoever, you have to pull it out, I want to say after about 6 or 7 minutes, or else you run the risk of overcooking those steaks. Admittedly, this did take one other practice run off camera, but with these, I think we might have achieved something beautiful. I don't know why I'm nervous. This is one of the best things I've ever made. Out of my own recipes or ideas, but yeah, this hits every single mark. Everyone knows how highly regarded the Wellington is and how well all these components work together. I can barely speak, my mouth is watering so much because it's so meaty and umami rich. But this right here, this little taco handheld sandwich style, wow. It's a little messy. I might have to work on the construction, but goddamn does this taste good. And there is some pink in there. It's a nice medium to medium rare. If you've got the tools and the patience, I say give it a crack. It is so damn good. I realize how ironic this creation is versus everything else I've been saying today, but you can't go wrong with anything I've tried today. So if you remake any of them, let me know over on Instagram. It's David_Seymour1. Maybe I should publish this somewhere, I don't know.
With the M without the AD. Flipping burgers and my money super lazy. Try and make a meal tonight, they ain't paying me. Try and supersize my life with my 18. Yeah, our style wasn't wavy, but we had a vision.